Hi, and welcome back to Purple Collar Life. I'm Chad, and in today's video we're talking about firewood. We're going to answer a question that I get quite often, especially this time of year. This time of year it starts to get a little bit chillier at night. The fall leaves start coming down and people start wondering about heat in the wintertime. The question that I get pretty often is, how much firewood do I need in order to heat my house throughout the winter? Now there's a lot of variables to talk about here. We'll talk about those variables, but then mostly about what I know living in Northwest Pennsylvania and heating with a wood stove like ours and a house like ours. And that can help you determine how much firewood you might need if you're in a similar location, situation, and using a similar stove to ours. Now, I was just checking out some firewood here. I've got firewood stacks all throughout the property. This is an IBC tote of oak. This is an IBC tote of cherry. And it takes 3 full totes, these are the 330-gallon totes, to make 1 cord of firewood. 1 cord of firewood is defined as 128 cubic feet. That's typically a stack of firewood that's 4 feet tall, 8 feet long, and 4 feet deep. So now we're all on the same page when we talk about how much is a cord of firewood. Again, typically 4 feet tall, 8 feet long, 4 feet deep, or 3 full IBC totes that are the 330-gallon type. We're going to take the Workmaster up to the firewood stack. I've had it warming up here in the shed. Make sure we get all the mice out of it before we drive. Nice day for a Ford tractor ride up through the woods. Got Olive with me. Jennifer's at a volleyball match tonight, so Olive's hanging out with me. So up here in the woods, I've got 2.5 cords of stacked seasoned firewood in this stack. This is all Pennsylvania hardwoods, primarily oak and maple, a little bit of hickory, but mostly oak and maple in this stack. And that's also important. The type of wood you're burning helps determine how much wood you're going to need. Our Pennsylvania hardwoods burn at higher BTUs than a softwood does. So you're going to get more heat per piece or per stick of firewood out of hardwoods. The oak and the hickory burn the longest and put out the most BTUs. The cherry and maple also do a nice job compared to softwoods, but not quite as many BTUs as the oak and the hickory. So this section right here is mostly maple. That was oak. Some more maple down here. And that stack that Olive is looking at is all oak. It's red oak. I still have some rounds there that need split, but the rest of that is all seasoned. I've got a couple totes up here. This wood I'll burn first because it is the oldest and it's mostly cherry, so it is ready to burn now. Cherry seasons faster than oak does. And then you can see behind the big tool rack here, I've got a stack of some hickory that needs split up. That hickory will burn really well, but it's going to need to season a little bit first because it has not been split. That's shagbark hickory. So we've talked about the type of wood we burn here. We've talked about what makes a cord of wood. Now let's talk about the different types of stoves. In our house, we use a wood burner in the basement. It is catalytic combustion, which means it's a little bit higher efficiency than a non-catalytic combustion stove. And that's also important because the higher the efficiency, the less wood you have to burn to create heat for wintertime heat. An open fireplace is going to be a lot less efficient than a fireplace where you can control the airflow in and out of the stove. So an open fireplace is going to be the least efficient, but still will produce heat. It's just going to take you more wood. Then you're going to have a non-catalytic combustion stove that'll be a little bit more efficient because you can control the damper and the airflow in. And then you're going to have a catalytic combustion high efficiency stove that'll be the most efficient and create the most heat using the least amount of wood. When it comes to outside wood boilers, those traditionally take more wood to create heat than inside wood burners. But with an outside wood boiler, you can put bigger pieces of wood in that'll burn longer. They don't necessarily have to be fully seasoned. You can throw all kinds of different species in. At least that's what I've heard from other channels and other people I've talked to who have outdoor wood boilers. There's a guy just up the road here who uses an outdoor wood boiler to heat all his hot water, not only for his baseboard heaters, but also for hot water in the home. And he is constantly getting log trucks of logs, cutting them, stacking them, splitting them, and burning them in that boiler. Now, it doesn't always have to be fully seasoned. He'll take green wood, cut it up, feed it into that boiler before it's fully seasoned. The other thing to consider is the size of your house. Our house, which you can kind of see through the woods there, is about 1,200 square feet. And that 1,200 square feet of living space sits on top of the basement. Wood burners in the basement. So it actually heats about 1,200 square feet of basement space. Then that heat warms the floors and goes up the stairs, and that heats the upstairs. So the area we're heating is 1,200 square feet, but also the basement below that. And like I said, we are located in Northwest Pennsylvania, so we do get all 4 seasons. It does get cold in the wintertime. We get snow here, but it's not as cold as someone who's in a more northern climate than us. Michigan, Wisconsin, Canada, Alaska. Those areas get much colder temperatures in the winter, so obviously the heating needs would be greater than what we have here in Northwest Pennsylvania. A couple other important things to note about your house is how old it is. Our house is about 22 years old, so it's not extremely old. It's pretty well insulated, and that makes a big difference. Older houses that don't have quite as much insulation do require more heat in order to heat the home. The other thing to note is, are you using the wood burner for heating the house entirely? Are you heating just zones of the house? Like, we close doors to the office and Mackenzie's bedroom when she's in college because there's no sense in allowing the heat in those rooms when it's not needed. We just let it fill the bedroom and the living space and the kitchen space that we're in. And we do have electric baseboard heaters throughout the house. So we like to use the heat from the wood stove as our primary heat and the heat from the baseboard heaters as supplemental heat. When we first moved into the house, before we had a lot of firewood built up, it was probably the reverse. We used the baseboard heaters as our primary heat and the wood stove as our supplemental heat. We try to make sure we cut, split, and stack enough firewood years in advance to keep us warm throughout the winter so that our wood stove can be our primary heat source throughout the winter months. So one of our viewers who had watched the video about how we use our buck stove to heat the house has recently moved into a home. They're cutting and stacking and splitting firewood to hopefully heat their home this winter. And they've been doing that all summer long. So hopefully they have enough seasoned firewood to heat the house. But they did have the question, how much do we need to cut, split, and stack and season so that we can heat the house? And I remember when I first moved into this house and had the buck stove, I had no idea either. I didn't really even keep track of firewood by cords. I would just cut, split, and stack firewood, carry in what I needed to heat with, and I didn't really keep track of how much wood I was burning. In the 22 years of living in this house, I've now learned to keep track of how much firewood I'm using each year. And I have a pretty good idea based on the winter, how mild or how cold it is, how much firewood I'll need. And firewood is like bacon. You can never have too much. So it's always better to plan ahead and have more firewood than you think you're gonna need, because if you're like us, during the COVID year, we were working from home, schooling from home, we were home all day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We burnt through a lot more firewood when we were home all the time. It was also a colder winter. So we actually depleted all our firewood stock that was seasoned that winter and had to buy firewood. I'll put a link up above to back when we had to buy firewood to heat. But now we've got a stockpile built up enough that it should get us through the next several winters of keeping the fire going, keeping us warm. So if you went to Google and you searched for how much firewood do I need for the winter, here's what it says. It says rough calculations. For cold climates like the Northeast and Midwestern states, plan on 2 to 3 cords of firewood per 100 square feet of space you're heating. And milder climates such as the Mid-Atlantic and Southern states, 1 to 2 cords per 1,000 square feet should be plenty to keep you warm. Now, like I said, I can tell you from experience of living in this home for 22 years and trying to use the wood stove as the primary heat source when we're home, how much we use in about 1,200 square feet. Another advantage to having too much firewood is it's not gonna go bad. I made a firewood video last winter about what is the shelf life of firewood? How long can you keep it? If you store it properly and it's Pennsylvania type hardwoods like oak, maple, And hickory, it can last up to 10 years if it's stored right. Now cherry's shelf life is a little bit less. It starts to get pithy a little bit earlier, so I try to burn the cherry more frequently than the oak and the hickory because it just does not last quite as long in storage. Another thing to remember is if you're buying firewood, it's better to buy it at the start of the season. Once you get midway to the end of the winter season, it's a lot harder to find seasoned firewood. You might end up with firewood that was almost fully seasoned, or the prices might have gone up quite a bit because firewood becomes more scarce mid to late winter. So if you're one of the people that don't have woods around you to source your own firewood, it's important to buy that firewood early so you're getting good seasoned firewood, what we call like the first crop of firewood, the stuff that's ready to burn. Okay, so let's get to the answer to the question, how much firewood will you need for the winter? There are all those variables we talked about. We know how much a cord is. By the way, cord, that measure was actually established in the 1600s. That's how long people have been cutting, splitting, and stacking firewood and measuring it by the cord size. So that's super interesting. Now we know how much a cord is. We know that I'm talking about here in Northwest Pennsylvania, a cold climate, but not a super cold climate, and heating a house that's about 1,200 square feet. So what I've found, and I keep track of these year after year, the average, what we typically burn in our house, 1,200 square feet, catalytic combustion, buck stove, model 91. I'll put a video link to our type of stove up above. We burn 2 to 4 cords per winter. That's our average. So we have had winters where we burned more than 4 cords, and last winter we only burned 1 cord because it was an extremely mild winter and it didn't take that much firewood to heat the house up. So we burnt less wood last winter than any other winter that I can remember. I don't think I ever had a winter heating this house that I burnt less than a cord other than the winter between 2023 and 2024. Now we also have friends and family around us that also use wood to heat with. So if you were one of those people and you had a non-catalytic combustion stove, how much more wood would that take? Well, in a house like ours, about 1,200 square feet, you would plan on 4 to 6 cords per winter because you're a little bit less efficient in your burning. You have to burn a little bit more wood. Now, I don't know anybody who just uses an open fireplace for heat, but according to Google, if you just had an open fireplace in your home and you're using that to heat your home, you would plan on using 1 cord of firewood about every 7 days. So that's a huge difference in efficiency. If you've got no way to control the draft and the air inlet, you can see how much of that heat just goes up the chimney rather than into your home. So again, people sometimes ask about outdoor wood boilers. In my experience and what I've heard from people who own them, they take a lot more wood to create the heat that you want. The outdoor wood boilers around here, a house that's 1,500 to 2,000 square feet, they can burn 9 to 12 cords per winter to heat the home. So you can see that's a lot more than the 2 to 4 cords that we're used to burning in our wood stove in the basement in order to heat our 1,200 square feet. Like we talked about, there's a lot of variables, so it's a hard question to answer, but hopefully this gave you an idea. And like I said, firewood's like bacon, you can never have too much. It's always better to plan ahead, have extra firewood for the next year rather than to run out during this winter. The type of wood matters, your climate matters, the insulation of your house matters, the size of your house matters, the type of heating stove you're using matters. That all factors into how much firewood you're gonna need to heat for the winter. But if someone were moving into my house and they were gonna use my wood stove and burn the wood that I have here seasoned, I would tell them plan on 2 to 4 cords per winter for a normal winter. If it's colder, you're gonna need more. If it's more mild, you're gonna need less. And that's a good rule of thumb for us in our house here in Northwest Pennsylvania. I wanted to include in this video that one of the great things about YouTube is that people watch from all over the country and all over the world. Some people watch and they produce firewood to sell. If you're one of those people that sell firewood, leave a comment down below in this video. I'm sure you have lots of customers and you've kind of learned how much firewood they burn on average in each winter. If you're someone like me and I've never sold a stick of firewood, even though I have tried bundling and selling them recently, I haven't yet sold any. I've only made firewood for my own use here to heat my home. And that gives me a pretty good idea how much firewood I need for my house. But everybody else from all different areas of the United States and all different areas of the world could watch this video. And if you're one of those people, let people know on average how much firewood you burn in each winter. That can help people who are new to burning firewood as a heat source understand how much firewood they might need in their geographic region and their types and size of house. And that's useful information for viewers for years to come. And this is also a good time to click that like button down below and the subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber to us here at Purple Collar Life. So Olive and I are getting ready to take the tractor, put it back in the shed, and then go in the house and see if we can catch some of Jennifer's volleyball match on television. Hopefully the team is doing well. If you found this video informative and entertaining, please click that thumbs up button. Like I mentioned earlier, leave a comment down below how much you plan on burning in a typical winter. That'll help other people who are watching this video to gauge how much wood they should plan on. I've got a good feel for my house with my type of wood with my wood burner, but all of you have different experiences from different areas, different size houses, and different types of wood stoves. So leave those comments down below to help future viewers out. Thanks for watching. Hopefully we'll see you again the next time. Look out, Olive. Easy. Hey. Easy. Goodness, she's gonna be hurting.